welcome back to another Outdoor Philosophy. And today we're going to continue our discussion of Dumbing Down Our Kids by Charles Sykes. There'll be a link for the book in the description down below. And today we're looking at the entirety of section 3, which is 3 chapters, and this is on the moral dumbing down, where first he talks about the values wasteland, and then it is telling on mommy and daddy, and then finally doctor. And so there's a lot to be said about this. So before we dive in, let's talk briefly about morality. So when we talk about morality, is there an absolute morality or is there not? This has been one of these hinge pins of discussion between philosophers and faith. Of course, as a Christian, we would say, yes, there is a moral absolute, and God is the one who determines those moral absolutes. And that's one thing. And people say, oh, well, I don't believe in God. Well, is morality something that is naturally within us? Even if you don't believe in God, is there something to be said about morality being part of us as people? Or is morality just something in which social constructs have developed? And if social constructs have developed, we have absolutely no basis to stand for anything. Okay, at what point in time is 20 years ago, the concept of homosexuality was just like, people just didn't talk much about it. And they protested, they got their rallies, they got all their rights, and now they're trying to move so far. It's like, you got your rights. Shut up now. We don't care. But they're trying to change the culture to make it that if you're straight, you're simply a homophobe. And that's not right either. Well, the reason we bring this up is the things that the homosexual community was doing then are being done now by the pedophilia community. So, you find some people that are into that kind of stuff. And so what we start to see is this shift. Well, if morality is exclusively defined by the social norms, then the social norms can be changed and everything is permissible. There is no morality. In which case, morality is merely defined by where we are at. And so if we create an anarchist country, there is no morality at all. Well, that is an interesting take. And I wanted to start with this by saying that even if you don't believe in God, accept the concept of an absolute morality. Do you think it's wrong? As Ravi Zacharias often uses this example when he's talking about moral right and wrong. Would it be wrong to take a baby and cut it into pieces right here with an axe? One of the analogies that he uses. And very few people will look at that and go, oh, that would be wrong. Well, by whose basis? All right. We have similar things going on in the abortion law. If you believe the pro-life argument, then growing inside the mother is a completely separate human being. They're not born yet. They don't talk yet, but they have a heartbeat. They have their own distinction. They have their own blood type. They have all these other things. To those people, an abortion is murder. To the opposing viewpoint, the pro-choice people, they say it's just a mass of cells. It's just a clump of cells. And so this is where we have another battle raging on the front. Where do we have morality? If that group of cells is just a group of cells like cancer, then sure, get rid of it. But if that group of cells is actually a human being, then we can't get rid of it. And so we have this interesting discussion on morality. And so with that as a jumping point, that we're jumping into an already murky pool, we talk about the values wasteland. And what he does is Charles Sykes goes through here and analyzes some curriculums which are starting to erode away at the concept that there is a right and there is a wrong, and that we should teach children what is right is wrong. So he actually starts on the very benign topic of cheating. Yes, it goes way downhill from here. He talks about cheating, and in these new classrooms, people are sitting here talking about is cheating okay? They never make any value judgment. They just say, hey, is it okay to cheat? Is it not okay to cheat? Would you ever cheat? Under what circumstances? And this is an interesting thing that he's talking about, these new courses called citizenship or ethics courses. First time I ever saw an ethics course was in grad school. They weren't required. And then, our moral decline kept getting so bad. Now they give us these ethics courses. And Chip Ingram once noted, everyone agrees we need ethics courses, but nobody can agree on whose ethics we use. And ethics courses of itself, if there is no morality, an ethics course is useless. If there is an absolute morality, then teach the absolute morality. But how can you possibly have an ethics course which makes a value judgment based on what is absolutely moral? And so we have this crisis about morality and ethics in our culture because of this. And so he talks about these school curriculum on citizen classes do away with the concept of any moral right and wrong. And of course they start with cheating. They don't specify it as right or as wrong. They just say, hey, it's another option, something you can think about. Now, I say that starts benign because from here it goes down, and now our school districts are starting to teach more and more explicit things. Now, in my generation going to school, we never talked at all about what you'd term as sex education until I think it was fourth grade. We had our very first introduction to this. They separated the boys and the girls in fourth grade. We're little 10-year-olds, and they, and then they take us separate groups and they show us different videos, and it was all giggly and woo, and all these guys and all these boys are, and I don't know what the girls were doing because, back then we knew the difference between a boy and a girl. I couldn't possibly imagine a school district segregating people based on boys and girls nowadays to teach them the basic fundamentals of sex education. Go figure. So, with that being said, they started to erode away at the entire concept of what is right and what is wrong, even in the area of sexuality, even getting to the point where the teachers were effectively telling their kids that your parents don't know what they're doing and aren't teaching anything right, and everything about this is all your choice, getting so far that in some of these courses they are literally teaching to experiment with each other, with themselves, in a variety of different circumstances. They're taught all sorts of interesting things in the name of education. And then he goes into this academic book, which is called A Kid's First Book About Sex. He goes into this, and this book starts really describing actual real sexual intercourse, goes into graphic detail about masturbation and all sorts of other weird things as they're discussing this major decline of morality in that respect. And again, if you believe in an absolute moral right and wrong, who is in charge of this? Is the parents in charge to teach, or is the school in charge to teach it? And then you have these issues because not all homes are good homes. I get that. And we actually dive into that a little bit. In fact, what the next section is about telling on mommy and daddy. And as I was reading this section, it reminded me of 1984. Now, of course, that wasn't necessarily the actions you did, but the thoughts you thought in the family. The family thinking, the family dynamics. Different families have different viewpoints on different things. And in 1984, Orwell says it was encouraged in the state-sponsored school systems to tell on your parents if they were guilty of wrongthink. And we're kind of seeing that same type of stuff now, which is kind of an interesting thing. But as it goes through this section on telling on mommy and daddy, they introduced all these different curricula that were talking, like, first scaring the kids, talking about what's touching, what's not touching. And there was one story about a woman that her daughter comes home, and after these things about, you can't, anytime somebody does anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, you can say no. And so the daughter interpreted that as, I don't feel comfortable when you tell me to clean my room, so I'm not going to clean my room. And it caused absolute rebellion at home. And in other studies by actual real university groups looking out for these types of curricula, they found that when kids were taught this type of curricula, they oftentimes came back and reported that somebody had touched them inappropriate when there was objective fact that it didn't happen. So the one study that they did is they gave a variety, basically it was the kids go in to see a pediatrician with the parents completely there monitoring the entire thing. And then they took half of the kids and put them through sex training education, these types of feelings-based programs, and the other kids, they didn't. And what happened is that despite all of those kids had parents completely and fully present during the examination, I think it was like 3 out of 5 of them came back and reported that the doctor touched them inappropriately. That is an interesting statement on the basis of these things. And so they start to get to the point where it comes down where in a public school setting, you can no longer put your hand on a kid's shoulder. And oftentimes, as the author describes here, sometimes that's what kids need. Sometimes that's what they need. And I remember as I've mentored a lot of kids over the years, some of them are more touchy-feely than others. There's some people that just need more physical contact, and that's okay. You have to know what is appropriate physical contact and what is not, for sure. I'm not saying we don't have any discussions. In fact, what we need is more discussions on the parents' end. Now, one of the studies that they looked into is a lot of these pro-abuse curricula studies are saying that as much as 50 or 60 or 70% of kids are being abused at home. So you got to have somebody. In fact, the curriculum we're saying find 2 people in your family life, 2 people in your community, and 2 people in your school. You can tell. And what the actual studies by, more psychologists looking at this said is that no, the numbers of families who would abuse their kids in bad ways is actually very small. And so there's interesting research on other things. And then the last chapter here is on doctor. And so we talk about, they kind of break this chapter into 2 separate chapters. One of these is about the physically disabled kids. And I have a neat story on both of these areas. So I was in a college course. Now this was college, this isn't high school, middle school, elementary school. But in a college course, it was a writing course, and our school was trying to be like the central hub in our state for advancement of students with disabilities. And this person comes in who's literally a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, unable to move anything, like anything. And the teacher's like, you can't be in this class. You have to, in the classroom, take out a pencil and paper and write essays in class and hand them in class. You can't do that. You can't be in the class. And it causes giant ruckus of insanity. Insanity all around. And the fact of the matter is, though, we had the same thing with, in fact, just about a year or so later, I'm in a microbiology course, and we have this, disabled student, and they're like, oh, I need to have this person read me the whole test and read me the answers. He's like, well, who's taking the test? And so it raises these issues. Now, that's what he's talking about, is do you take people who are very disabled and you put them into the classrooms? All it does is brings down the education level, because now the teacher has to spend more time focusing on one student, and the other students don't get the lesson. This is very related to what I talked about on the first video of this series. Maybe it was the second, but I think it's the first video, where I'm taking my biochemistry course, and I'd already had like the equivalent of like 7 years of chemistry and biology courses, and I'm in a class with people who've had the equivalent of 1. How does my professor possibly write a curriculum or teach a class that's going to be challenging enough for me, a major who has to know this material, and the people who are crammed in here because the school said, oh, you need to take this class, and has no preparation for it. And so we have this situation, we have this issue where there used to be a time where you separated the kids out. We had the gifted class, we had the special the special ed class, and we had the normal mainstream class. That is what caused our education system to thrive. Everyone was getting the needs met at the level they were at. That was critically important. Okay, but now if you try and mix everybody together, everybody gets pulled down to the lowest level, and they talk about this a lot inside of this issue. Now, the second thing that he dive into is the manufacturing of the fake, I'm not going to use the word entirely fake, but the manufacturing of extra learning disabled students. And I start seeing this more and more coming down in our country and other countries as well, where students are, or even adults now are being diagnosed as ADD and all these types of things, and then you put them on medicines that you can never get off of. This isn't crazy stuff. There is no genetic test that can demonstrate this stuff. There's no chemical test that can demonstrate this stuff. There's nothing other than, a person that jumps back and forth from project to project. Maybe some of us are just built that way. And so I was caught up in this because I was going up through elementary school around the time that these types of things were coming out, and they tried to diagnose me with ADD. It was called ADD then, not ADHD now. And so, they were trying to give me like Ritalin or something. I don't know what it is. I think I only really took like 4 or 5 doses of the thing. I don't know. It was a constant battle at home. It was a constant battle at school, constant battle everywhere. And the fact of the matter is, was I ADD? No. You know what I was? I was from a completely screwed up home that no amount of medicine, no amount of anything is going to fix. Now, does that mean that, I went through and of course I was super high risk, C's, D's, boundaries all the way through until about 10th grade. And one of my mentors was my 10th grade teacher. In fact, I had his wife as a teacher in 7th grade. I had him as a teacher in 10th grade. And if you take my 10th grade report card and fold it in half, you see C's and D's on one side. It might be like maybe low B's and mid C's or something. And then on the other side of the report card, A, 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 A. I'm like, and the teacher's like, I have never seen such transformation. You know what happened, guys? I started to care. I looked at my background, I looked at my family life, and I said, these people in my family cannot help me be successful in my life. I have nobody in my family is successful as I would define successful. Nobody. And doing these types of things is not going to help. And I said, you know what? I don't know what the solution is, but this is something different. So let's try academics. And all of a sudden, immediately, I woke up. And I just got straight A's. All the way through the rest of 10th grade. All through 11th grade. All through 12th grade. Never got less than a B in college. I mean, I just woke up. I was not ADD. I wasn't having some learning disability. I woke up. And that's what I encourage you to do. Wake up. Take some knowledge, take some dedication, turn off the boob tube, turn off all the other things that are constantly entertaining and distracting you. Sit down with a tutorial and learn something new. That is so critically important. All you got to do is wake up, and you will go from low performance to high performance instantly. Stop relying on the teachers. Stop relying on the academic system. Just you yourself get up and do something different. I'm going to leave it at that. This video is already way longer than I like these to be. But anyway, hopefully it was helpful for you. The dumbing down of the morality of our students, this is a big deal. Let me know your thoughts, your stories, your essays in the comments down below.